Great. So I'm here and pleased to announce the arrival of the 8 absentee drop-off boxes that have been ordered for installation here in Chatham County to receive the ballots once completed by Chatham County voters. They arrived yesterday, which was not, well, coincidentally, they arrived yesterday, which was National Voter Registration Day, a celebration of voter registration, and so very apt that those would arrive that day. National Voter Registration Day has been around since 2012. Largely through the efforts of the League of Women Voters. It was created as a celebration of registration. And not coincidentally, the 8 boxes that appear here that have now arrived, the cost of those boxes was underwritten by the League of Women Voters, and we're thankful to them for raising the funds to underwrite those boxes. And it's not just the purchase of the boxes, there's also installation costs. There are CCTV camera footage logistics that have to be covered. And so there are some additional costs related to the installation and monitoring of those that our friends at the League of Women Voters are also helping to underwrite. So we thank them for that.
Could you tell us a little bit about, describe what this box is? First of all, how secure is it? Basically a description of how it's going to work, how secure it is, and you mentioned that there's cameras there, so there will be monitoring of the box, I would assume, 24/7?
That's right.
That?
Sure, great. So we have ordered these boxes from an official vendor that provides these boxes throughout the country. As you would imagine, there's been a much higher demand for boxes, and so there was somewhat limited supply. I think that they probably expanded their output, but we were able to secure these boxes from an official vendor that has the security of the ballots, first and foremost in mind. So these are secure boxes. We have several locks on them that will ensure the security, and I'll show you real quick what those are. You want to do it now, or do you want to do it later? Yeah, sure. Yep. So the boxes are somewhat similar to a library book drop-off box. If you recall, when you used to return books in the little slot, the slot would only allow you to put it in, and you can't reach in to take anything out. And in that sense, kind of like a mailbox, too, where you drop off a postcard or something like that. So the state election bulletin that allowed these drop-off boxes to come online requires that they be tamper-proof in the way that these are, so that you can't, reach in and do anything with the ballots. There's minimizes the prospect of any ingress of water or any other kind of outside forces. So they will always be monitored by security cameras at each of the 8 locations where these will be installed. There is a corresponding CCTV camera that will be trained in that direction. We will have access to the footage, from 24/7 basis to, God forbid, should there be any issue with these boxes, we'll be able to, look at the footage to see what may have happened. Again, that's a requirement of the state election bulletin that permitted these to move forward, was to make sure that we have that kind of security measure in place. The boxes will be permanently affixed to a concrete pad, bolted down. The county maintenance people will oversee the installation. They're familiar with how to install them. We have one currently online here at the main office that was installed for the June election. That was sort of our test run. We have our CCTV camera here, got it permanently affixed, and had overwhelming success with that test run here at the main office, and hence the effort to expand that to now 8 additional absentee drop-off boxes. They will be clearly marked as an absentee drop-off box. They will stand out from the surroundings, so it should be pretty easy for voters to find them at the various locations, and I believe pretty user-friendly once you get there with your ballot to drop it off.
And I know you guys aren't releasing these specific locations, but talking about accessibility and making it kind of a general location, you guys thought about that and how to make them easy accessible to?
Sure. So another requirement of the state election bulletin is that the location where the box is installed has to be a governmental property. Makes sense. You don't necessarily want some private property to be the location. So because of the requirement that it be a governmental property where it's installed, we had a somewhat limited number of options to draw from in deciding the locations. A number of factors went into the 8 locations that we ultimately decided upon and that our board has now approved. We are awaiting and we expect to get approval from governmental entities that control those properties where they will be installed. But until we get that, signed on the dotted line from those governmental entities, we're going to, withhold releasing the actual locations. Considerations that went into the site selection process, of course, included, whether it's a governmental property, whether there is available security camera resources there, trained in the direction of where that concrete pad would be, access to, to the voting public, whether that be ability to park, drive through, walk up to, et cetera. That was a consideration. And perhaps more generally, we wanted to maximize the availability of these drop-off boxes countywide. The easiest way that we saw to do that is to attempt, if at all possible, to have one in each of the 8 county commission districts. And so that's been sort of a guiding principle. And we're moving towards that. There is one out in Garden City that sort of straddles a line, but we think that it's going to provide ample access to our friends out on the west side to drop off ballots as needed.
And, how many ballots can it take on a daily basis? And, if every day is someone's going to take out ballots?
Yeah, good question. So the state election bulletin that created these drop-off boxes requires that for the 3 weeks leading up to the election, they have to be checked and emptied every day. And then proper documentation is made of the ballots that are received. Leading up to that point, prior to that 3-week period, they have to be checked every 72 hours. The bulletin also requires that it be teams of 2 people that oversee the collection of those ballots. And so what we'll have is we've gotten a good response from the public, who we've got 40 volunteers to assist with the collection of these ballots. We will have 1 permanent member of our staff joined by 1 duly authorized and deputized volunteer who has passed the background check, done all of the paperwork with the county, and has taken the oath of office to allow them to assist in that regard. We'll have teams of 2, 1 permanent board member, 1 authorized volunteer who will be carrying out that collection process. The number that it can accommodate, I'm not quite sure. In the test run that we had here at the main office, where we were checking that every day, we never got to a point where it even came close to exceeding the capacity. So we're confident that the capacity of the box itself will be plenty to accommodate the absentee ballots that we expect to see. And for what it's worth, as of today, Sabrina, how about this? As of Tuesday, there had been 33,500 absentee ballots that had been requested, and the first day for mailing those out was on the 18th. They're not mailed out here locally. They're mailed out from the contractor, so it may be a few days before those actually hit the mailboxes of Chatham County residents, but we expect them to be, hitting people's boxes soon. People are probably going to be looking for an opportunity to drop them off, so we're trying to fast track as much as we can the installation of these boxes to get them online so people can start dropping off their ballots early.
I mean, 8 of these boxes is kind of a big deal, spread out throughout the county. Can you kind of go into how you hope that these will impact voter experience this election day?
Sure. Yeah. Obviously, with the COVID pandemic in place, there was a strong request from the public that we address any concerns people might have about voting in person or even dropping off an absentee ballot in person here, with the concerns about the U.S. Postal Service and the kind of upheaval that's going on there and the effects that it's had on mailing times. A lot of people also wanted to seek alternatives to mailing it. They wanted to be able to drop it off in person. So having these 8 drop-off boxes addresses both the concern about in-person voting, whether it be early or on election day, but even the concern about, about mailing their ballots in. that there's a certain distrust about the reliability of the time frame for mailing these ballots in. So the absentee drop-off boxes address both the pandemic, COVID concern, but also any concern about the U.S. Postal Service. That was really redundant, but you can get a soundbite out of that somewhere.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah.
Do you think that you'd have all 8 of these boxes in a regular election year versus a COVID election year? I mean, is this kind of the future maybe?
Good question. I hope that this absentee drop-off box innovation, which is a new innovation, I mean, it was not allowed prior to June. And so I think that it was a response to the onset of the COVID pandemic. And I hope that the success of absentee drop-off boxes shows that it should, remain in place as an option to in-person voting or mailing in ballots. I think that, that steps have been taken to ensure the security. So to the extent that there is a concern in the public about any lapses in security that might exist from a drop-off box, I think that the experience thus far statewide has shown that there have not been the types of lapses in security that people might fear. So I think that with 3 elections where drop-off boxes are in place, that the lessons learned from that will be that this should be an option for voters going forward.
Sure. I mean, you're not going to give back the boxes, right?
We're not going to give them back. Whether they stay permanently installed or not remains to be seen.
Temporary permanently kind of thing.
Temporary permanently.
Elections come up for sale, I mean, why not?
It's our hope that these will remain as an option in future elections.
They might move, they might stay where they are.
Right. And we may even see, underwriting either from the county or from other, non-governmental partners who want to help buy some more boxes. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if there's a combination of that, both governmental resources and non-governmental resources put towards installing more absentee drop-off boxes.
This question borders on paranoia. You mentioned the fact that the 2 people that will actually be removing the contents from the boxes, I assume it was every evening, correct?
Say that one more time.
The 2 people that will be removing the contents of the boxes every evening have both been vetted. One is a permanent employee.
Right. That's right.
So my question, it seems like that's the weak link in this chain. So from the time these ballots are removed until they're brought to where here physically?
Right.
I mean, how are you able to make sure that nothing happens between the time they leave that box and the time they arrive here?
So, to the extent there's a concern about the security of the ballots between the time they are picked up from the box and dropped off here at the main office for processing, both members of the collection team are properly vetted. They go through a county background check. They get a drug screen. They take the oath of office. And so those individuals have been properly trained on how to collect these ballots. They also have to log them on a daily log showing the number of ballots that have actually been collected. As for the brief period of time when they are in the possession of both of those individuals in the car that transports them to our office, we, from past experience with transferring of ballots, we're confident that there won't be any lapse in security during that brief time that they are being transported from the drop-off boxes to our location.
This is another, I guess, question of kind of paranoia, but is there any way to control someone from the public kind of messing with it, like putting trash in there, or I don't know, like just doing something to mess up?
Well, we'll demonstrate in a minute. So the slot on the box is very narrow. It's barely thick enough to stick an envelope through. So it definitely deters any kind of tampering. We have 3 locks on it to keep any ne'er-do-wells from trying to break in and do anything through that means. But I think that these boxes are the standard used in local elections like we have here, and have been tested and properly designed to minimize any potential tampering that might occur.